All right, so let's talk about React hooks now. React hooks are essentially special built-in functions that we can run that handle state management. So basically handle loading data and keeping it in that and moving it around as needed. The first one we're going to learn about is useEffect. So I'm going to import useEffect from React here. And if I were to try, well, I want to call this inside of useEffect. So the way useEffect looks is I'll just call useEffect, which is a function, but inside of the function, it takes two parameters. It's going to say expects 1 to 2 arguments, but got 0. So we're going to give it 2 arguments. The first one is actually going to be a function, and the second one is going to be an empty array. So this is going to be a callback function, which looks like this. And inside of here is the code that we want it to run. So inside of here, I'm going to comment this out for now so I'm not constantly accessing that external API. If I just do console log hello, well, first of all, I think I'm going to get an error here, and I'll show you what happens. It says you're importing a component that needs useEffect. It only works in the client component, but none of its parents are marked with use client. So if you remember when we were doing this styling stuff, we had to use use client. Well, now we have to use it as well. So I'm going to do this up here, use client. I have to have it at page.tsx because page.tsx is at a higher level. It's referenced by layout before the styled stuff is. So I have to put this here, and now it's fine. And now if I go here and I look in my console, you'll see it says hello, and it actually does it twice. So if I refresh, it'll do it twice. It just, when it initially loads, it does it a couple times. It's a little bit weird like that. So this tells me how often it wants to run. If I leave this empty, if I don't put anything here, it's going to run anytime anything is modified on the page. If I put an empty array here, it's only going to run on the initial load of the page. And then if I were to put a variable name in here, it would track that variable. And anytime that variable is modified, it would run the code that's inside of here. So I only want this to run initially when it loads. So that's why I'm leaving this as an empty array. And now I can fetch all the Pokemon. So this will run. And every time it runs, it's gonna load all of the Pokemon. It's not doing anything with it. So in here, I actually want to return data.results so I can get it back. And then over here, I'm going to console log fetch all Pokemon. And now in my console, it should load them. Oh, so we have an issue that the promise is pending. So the reason why this is the case is because this is an asynchronous function that takes time, but I can't actually have an asynchronous action happening here in my components. So what I have to do is a different thing to sort of handle the data. And what it is .then. Any promise has a .then function that you can call, and this will run whatever, this will run this code whenever the egg is hatched, whenever the promise is fulfilled, and it will take a function as well, a callback function inside of here. So these are our parameters for the function, and this is the code that's going to be executed. So in here, this will return whatever. So I'll say R for the data. Essentially, that's what's going to be this data.results. And then here I'm going to console log R. So now instead of a promise, I should actually see the data come through here. Let's refresh. And now we can see the data in our browser. Very cool. So we actually have access to that data now. I want to assign this data to a variable so that I can pass that data to the table, and then I can display the stuff that I want to display. So I'm going to take, well, let's leave this for now, but the first thing, the only things I can display right now are name and URL. And That's okay. We're eventually going to call all of these URLs as well so we can get more specific data for each Pokemon. But for now, let's try to display the name and the URL. So I'm going to create a new type here, new file, and we'll call it Pokemon.ts. And it's just going to be export type Pokemon equals, and it's going to be name, which is a string, and it's going to be URL, which is a string. So this is the only information that we have right now. So let's go back over to page, and I'm going to take this stuff out. I'm not going to use it anymore. And what I want to do is actually send all of this information. So I want to create headers as well, like it did before. So we'll say export type Pokemon headers equals name string, URL string. Now, it's a little redundant because that's the same as this, but it might change later, it might be different. So let's import those types. I'm going to get rid of this student type, and we'll import Pokemon and Pokemon headers from our types. Now we have to figure out how to pass our headers in, and well, first of all, we know our headers are going to be, so we'll say const headers, which is going to be Pokemon headers equals, and it's going to be name, which will be name like before, and URL, which is going to be URL. And now the headers are going to go through, but the problem is the type doesn't match, so we'll have to fix that later. That's okay. For now, we'll leave that. But what about our actual Pokemon data? Well, that's actually going to require us to use another hook, which is called useState. And I think we'll do that in another video. So right now our code's not functioning, but we'll leave off anyway. So I'll see you guys in the next one.